Hello, friends. This is Will Costello, Master Sommelier, and thank you for joining me for SOMMSCHOOL, your insider track for learning all about the beverage industry, and especially from my perspective, how and why to sell wine, whether this be some of the topics that we talked about on how to write a wine list, or Rhone varietals, where we covered with Josh Orr, Master Sommelier, on Tuesday, how to use wine tasting in your everyday life, not only from cook and meal for your families, but also on how to make selections for the wine list. And today's topic I'm really excited about is how to price a wine list to sell. And our guest today is Augusto Ferrarese, the corporate beverage director for Urban Kitchen Group, and someone I look up to greatly, not only for his long experience in the industry, but also for the simple fact that when you go to his restaurants, there are plenty of wines to buy. And I'll only start off by saying I'm extremely impressed, as you sent a copy earlier, of just how many wonderful values there are on the list. It makes me want to open my wallet more because of how many there are. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Will. Pretty excited. We need more guests like you. So come anytime. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's an honor being here. And, I think also you represent one of the excellence, winery that we have in the U.S. And so I think it's an honor for me to just be a part of your podcast.
Thank you. I wanted actually to start off today to tell you a story about one of the best price experience that I've had. And this happened to come from when I was over in Italy. I was in Rome. I was at a restaurant in Rome dedicated to wine. I think their wine list was probably about that thick. All Italian, well, mostly Italian, right? It was called Cul-de-sac. It is kind of right near the Pantheon in Rome. And my wife and I had gone to the Vatican, and we had gone and, saw a bunch of other sites that day. We were definitely tired, and we wanted to go sit down and just enjoy a bottle of wine. And we sat down at this restaurant that was gigantic. And I ended up ordering a Soave, and because we were having a great time, 2 different bottles of Lacrima di Mora d'Alba. And I think I ended up paying, with some food and those 3 bottles of wine, something like 140 euro. And this was in the summer in Rome when, it's like top of tourist season. And to me, I remember that experience so much because I kept going back to this list and kept going, gosh, that's so cheap. Gosh, that's so cheap. And, I don't usually drink 3 bottles with my wife. Usually 2 is good. But I kept going, send me another one, send me this, because it was so great. And I think that alone, by looking at the prices, engendered me to want to buy more. And I know you recognize this, so I want you to, start off at whatever point you want to, but why and how do you price your wine lists? And how does that eventually become the reason that people are spending more and have more bottles on the tables?
Well, so first of all, we know for a fact that Italian wines, you're talking about, Soave from Veneto, Lacrima di Mora d'Alba is a wine that we actually have on the menu. I really enjoy those wines. And the good thing is, like, when you work with some area of France that are not Burgundy, of course, or Bordeaux, Spain, Italy, you can find really affordable wines, and everything comes down to markup. Yesterday I was driving, I was listening to a podcast with Kevin Zrali, and he was telling the story of, how Windows of the World started, and how actually, the owner said, hey, I want to have the biggest and largest wine list on the planet. I want to have everything that is out there. I don't care how much I pay for. And when basically Kevin Zrali, which, remember, Michael Skurnick worked there. You had James Beard. Like, we're talking about, I could not even bust tables most likely, just to understand the level of what we're talking about. And what was so super interesting was, like, when Kevin Zrali basically presented the wine list to the owner, that was the former owner of Four Seasons and stuff. He said, well, lower everything by 20%. What I want to do over here is, like, I want to sell a lot of wine, and I want to be volume driven, and I want to make the wine affordable. So I think Cucina, the Urban Kitchen Group with the owner Tracy Borkum, in the early stages of 2008, 2009, when the economy crashed, had a brilliant idea to actually commit to retail wine, inside a restaurant setting, and basically to add that kind of like what we call corkage, that is basically the fee that you pay in order to drink the wine on premise. They really started at $5. Right now we're up at 10. But I think the goal was really a vision. And we're not comparing, of course, Urban Kitchen Group to Windows of the World Wine, but Windows of the World. But what I'm saying is like, it's a vision of an owner that decided, okay, I want to feed the people and I want the people to drink. Also understanding that you mentioned, Soave and Lacrima di Moro d'Alba. I mean, you're a master sommelier. You've been around. You've been in my position before. You purchase those wines. You know what they are. But the average consumer doesn't know most of those wines. The labels don't really help. So I feel like the price point can be a great way to actually allow people to drink something that they might not have ever chose because the wine could have been $60. But at $25, it's a completely different perception because if you don't like the wine, you haven't made a commitment, and especially a financial commitment.
Right.
So I think everything starts with vision. So I think the vision is the most important thing, and the job of in theory, the job of the wine director, I think, more than the selection, which something that I explained to all the good people that I've been working with during the years, we focus too much only on the selection of wine.
Mm-hmm.
When you start working with a wine program that generate $4, $5, $6 million just in wine, I think it's more important to focus on pricing and understanding that your pricing structure and sharing the deals with your patrons.
Right.
I think that's what goes a really long way. And by sharing the deals, that doesn't mean then when you commit to a 50 cases drop of a specific producer, you're going to have that wine at the lowest price. It means that you're going to try to be competitive. You're going to try to, each wine that we buy, we spend a good amount of time to do R&D. We go online, we take a look at, what are the prices online, understanding that the average retail has kind of like a 50%, markup average, depends. And then you go all the way down to Costco that works with, 12 to 14%. So
14%, yeah.
Yeah. So you can compete, of course, with that, market, but also it's a different experience. You walk into a restaurant that has a really large wine wall. You normally have always a person or two that can help you out with your experience. And, you're also in prime locations. I mean, there are costs, of course, tied to do what we do that a regular retailer or a online retailer would never have. I mean, just the facility cost, like, R&M, repair and maintenance. So I think there are a lot of factors. Pricing structure is the key, and really being able to identify that it's not about you, that it's about the patrons, and it's about also, I think showing variety. I think that's really what's important. I mean, in my opinion. So.
Okay, so one of the things that you mentioned was, passing on the deal to your customer, right? So we've all been presented with that deal where you got, buy a full pallet and we'll give it to you at $4 a bottle if you'll take the full pallet. Generally, I remember one specific wine. It was the white wine blend from Sicily oh man, it's escaping me now, but it has a beautiful blue label on it. And I remembered getting that for $4 a bottle and going, wow, this is like incredible wine right now. What we decided to do was pour it in like demi-carafe and carafe at the pool. Instead of selling it as a bottle, we just said, hey, here's a half a carafe. So it was like half a liter for like $13 and a full liter for like $18. And you know how many freaking carafes we sold? That flew out the door so quickly. And it didn't require us counting it at the end of the month because it was gone. And I didn't even try to sell them as bottles. I said, hey, we're going to open so many of these that you choose the size. You want a 500 or do you want a liter? And it worked really well.
I think that for us, we are slightly more exposed to the average restaurant because since we kind of like advertise ourselves to be really competitive, almost like at retail prices. So I think, we need to work in a different way. So, the normal restaurant goes on to 50, 300, 350, sometimes 400% if you're really, upper scale kind of like restaurant, which we can't do. So I think it's more, when I talk about sharing the deal, is like, I get a wine that I know goes, normally wholesale cost, let's say like is $30 for myself and for a normal retailer, but I can commit to a pallet, 2 pallets, whatever the case may be, and I get, of course, a discount of 50%. At that point, if the average price online, first of all, remember that it's always important to make sure that the winery, whatever winery you're working with, whatever wine you're buying,
Right.
normally what I do, I make sure that the winery is okay with a certain pricing that I'm trying to set if the price is low than the average online, because you don't want to have, those are relationship, so you don't want to affect, of course,
Right.
the winery. There are many wineries direct in California as well that they, you buy directly from them. So I advise any buyer to check with the winery first, make sure that that's okay with them. I think it's important. But then you can price it even like $5-6 less, since you're already getting crazy margin in comparison what your normal margin is.
Right.
You price it $5 less than what's online average, and then it's a win-win. You're making money more than what you normally make on a bottle of wine.
Right.
The guest is happy, and then what's going to happen is that you're building trust. So the guest understands, okay, so this is a wine that they drink every day, and there is a crazy price point. So if I venture out on a different SKU that I might not be familiar with, I'm pretty sure that after 3 or 4 or 5 visits, I can trust, that person. So I think you need to build that kind of like patrons and sommelier relationship that goes along for a long time. And on top of that, and you know that, something else, and when you read books like Raj Par books and stuff, you understand it's really important to, during the years, be consistent and work with a lot of the same producers. That doesn't mean that you're not going to expand. You can expand because sometimes you have a 50 bottles wine program, then you have like a fast casual with like, 150. So it doesn't matter. But if you work with a core of producer that year after year, vintage every vintage, you keep buying from them, you're building a relationship in which if there is a great deal that they can give you, you might be in the short list of 10 people that are going to call. And it honestly happened to me. I'm not going to tell you who did it, but it's a California winery that we all love. Personal relationship started, and then somebody offered me a pallet of a wine that normally is around $80 wholesale for 25. So because there was a small issue that I had during the bottling time, so the blend was not what it normally was, and luckily they realized after 50 cases. But I was the first person. This person called me. I was like, "Hey, Augusto, this happened." And I was like, "Oh, lucky me." I was like, "All right." And so I think that's really important. Be consistent, buy from the same people, and then share the deal with your guests.
The other thing about that is that, residual revenues come with loyalty, right? So when someone comes to San Diego or to Irvine or to Newport, and they know that the wines are on the lists at your restaurants, when they have friends in town, let's say it's somebody from maybe Napa or Sonoma, or even someone from, Italy or France, when they have people in San Diego, they say, "Hey, make sure you go to this restaurant. They have our wines. They're great customers. You have to go there." And what does that person do? They tell more people, and they tell more people and more people. And the residual revenue that your restaurant generates is greater because you showed loyalty than worrying about changing your wine list constantly over and over and over again.
I completely agree. And I think that's one of those things that the previous generation of sommelier have done really, really well. I think, I think about Bobby Stuckey. There are so many that sometimes it's difficult to, it's a large pool of people, but you also need to look at what people have done in order to be successful. And I'm not saying copying because you're yourself, but you need to understand that there is some sort of like a roadmap, which you can learn quite a bit. And understand that relationship, it's what really fuel this industry. And when I talk about relationship, I'm talking about in a positive way. I know that this is a hard time, a lot of things are happening, so you got to be careful and measure your words. But when I talk about relationship, I'm talking about friendship, and I'm talking about the fact that if somebody, a friend of yours, a winery or a winemaker that need for you to clear 30 cases of the old vintage, okay, because they need to just create a space because there is the new bottle coming in.
Yeah.
You being available, since you have, in my position, it's the easiest position on the planet. Like I buy stuff, like, come on, it's not difficult. I buy wine for living. I think, I don't know, these days is a pretty good job to have. So I think because of the relationship that you built, you can help somebody.
Yes.
Okay. And then that person, next time that there is something special, maybe like a special release, maybe something so allocated that nobody can get, you might be in the short list of people that get your hands on something special. So.
Well, one of the things I noticed, because you sent me the wine list earlier, and this goes back to the whole idea about how to price a wine list, right? I noticed that you had, I believe it was 2017, so correct me if I'm wrong, but 2017 Cocherie Corton Charlemagne for $3,700. Now, for those of you who are watching who are sommeliers, or for those of you who are watching who are consumers, that is a screaming deal. Like, not to say that you don't want to have the chance to drink that bottle, but if you are one of those who wants to buy a bottle and go flip it somewhere, you could see that wine online for $5,600 right now. Now, for me, I always look at it like, well, how many friends can I get together
Exactly.
and go to the restaurant? And if I've never had Cocherie Corton Charlemagne, we can have a great meal. We can get one bottle for less than we could buy it anywhere else, enjoy a great meal together, and still have some money left over to buy some other much more value-driven place. Why do you, and I'm sure it follows the same idea, but why is that wine, at least to me, even at $3,700, such a good value on that list?
Well, so for me, it's pretty simple. So you're a master sommelier, I'm a sommelier. We love wine. We spend all the money on wine. But how many times we realize that, I mean, your situation is different, because when you get to your level and when you work in the place that you've worked, you've tasted a lot more things than I did. And so it's a different conversation. But a lot of sommelier, our generation, haven't had a chance to actually taste some of the wines that they should be able to taste. So for me, there are some instances in which, of course, I can't sell Cocherie for $2,000, because at that point, I think it's unfair also to the winery and to the brand and to the importer. So you can't really do something like this. But I want sommelier and wine lovers to actually drink some of the things that will be impossible to drink. So I might not make the same amount of money that I could on that specific wine, but most likely I'm recuperating some of that loss, especially because we're not going to get case of Corton Charlemagne these days, unfortunately. So we're just going to get probably 1 or 2 bottles. I'm going to make that up somewhere else. Could be maybe with your by the glass placement, could be maybe with a larger deal. So I understand that it is fine. I gave an example. I remember Nick Hetzel, MS, and Michael Jordan. They came in with their Jackson Family Group, and Michael Jordan walks in and he walks by the wine wall, and then he stops, and then he kind of goes back and he grabbed. There was a bottle of I think Ravenel, maybe 06 Monti de Tonnerre. It was $255, something like that. And then he looks at me, he looks at the bottle, looks at me, looks at the bottle, and then he turns around and is like, "How many do you have of this?" I was like, "I don't know, probably 2 or 3." It was like, "Well, open 2." And so the thing is, we're talking about master sommelier, they know what they're drinking, but in reality, it could be also the wine lover that might be familiar with the brand and understand that it's hard to get. Understand that of course we're talking about an expensive wine, but the wine could cost much more. So again, I think there is a portion of hospitality that goes into it, which is really important. And I think also we are volume driven. So I don't want to find myself sitting on some of those bottles forever. And it is, we're not, I mean, we offer pizza, we offer Italian food, pasta. So our food is average per person check is like $50. So I'm already doing something with the wine list that it's a stretch, because maybe Cocherie necessarily doesn't belong in this kind of setting. But however, I also thought there was a need at some point in San Diego to do something really bold, in which, if you count in the Nebbiolo on that menu, I don't know if they're like 27, 28. I mean, I'm just saying, you need to be yourself, and also you need to be a little bit of a dreamer, as long as your spreadsheet are perfect.
Well, and I'm so glad you made that point, because I wanted to make sure and ask, but you are not a wine museum, and no restaurant, unless they're Taillevent in Paris, or some of the institutions of Burgundy, where they don't mind having every bottle's sitting for 20 years. No restaurant typically has that opportunity. And so to your point, pricing a bottle to sell is going to do that. It's might be above your average price. Like, you know, we had a fairly good average price in my last restaurant. It was like $135 a bottle. That was pretty high, right? But I also had a lot of things at 65, a lot of things at 80, many things at multiple thousands. But if your average price is 70 bucks, it doesn't mean that you can't have something that's 200 or 300, because if they bought it anywhere else, it would be 600 or 700. And that means they'll move. And that means your ability to buy and your ability to recoup costs and for, you know, to make cash before you have to pay the invoice is also.
Well, you know, and this is a good point. Like, I think, talking about what the court has done, like for the certification, kind of like adding, sprinkling more and more some of the wine business into like, the certification, I think it's the right move, because at the end of the day, what's happening is like, it's less romantic, but wine being successful in my job has to do with some sort of like decent, let's say fair level of wine knowledge and depth, but has as much to do with being able to manage, $600,000 worth of inventory and understand that, I got to move this stuff so I can, keep my vintages fresh. So I think that you need to be really good at the admin side of what you do, especially if you want to run multiple restaurants, and understand that, especially with our margin that are like much slimmer than the average restaurant, $1, $2 on a bottle of wine that costs 20 and rolls in a new vintage and it's 22, 23. If you don't catch those changes, that's going to affect your cost of goods at the end of the month, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm saying is like, I'm really vocal with all the sommelier to understand that the romantic side of going through the studies, learning, I mean, it's fantastic. And I invite everybody, doesn't matter if you like certification or not, but I do believe that if you are in this industry, you like wine, go through some sort of certification, whatever the case may be, it's a beautiful experience. I also focused a lot on the administrative side of your job, which is going to allow you to actually be more profitable, more successful, and have much more fun, because you're moving dollars around, and as long as you stay in that kind of like spectrum, whatever it is, your markup, whatever you can do, I mean, it is a lot of fun. Like I've seen so many things during the years with this company that we could write books. I've seen Dan Petrosky walking in with a bottle of Ciparello 2010, and then I tap on the shoulder, I was like, "You Dan Petrosky?" He's like, "Yeah," and he knows my IP really well. I was like, "What are you bringing in?" I was like, "I've never been here. I have this bottle of Ciparello 10." I was like, "Well, you should compare with Ciparello 6 that I have on the menu, which has been shipped by the winery, and there is a little tag that says shipped directly by the winery, and see how it is." And he's like, "Oh, maybe we should do that." So I'm just saying, like, I feel like you need to have fun, man. I mean, wine is about having fun, and we have lost at times some of that fun spirit and part of what we do every day.
Well, one of the things that I was really impressed at how you write your wine list is that you charge a retail price, period. So if you're walking in the door, you're going to take that bottle to go and you're going to pay $75. But if you're sitting in the dining room, you're going to pay $75 plus $10 to open it here. What recommendations do you have for someone who doesn't have an on-premise and off-premise license? Like, for example, in Nevada, very few of these exist. And typically they have a kind of a desire that your off-premise pricing is going to go off price. They don't want every day for you to be selling those bottles in the dining room or in the bar or whatever. What recommendations do you have for somebody in another city that may not have that luxury and still pricing a wine within the margin?
Well, I think that, of course, this is a conversation that can be done when you are a multi-store. I think it's much harder when you are like just in one location. It's a little bit difficult, to of course, move stuff around if you have just a restaurant with 250 seats. But if you're like a multi-store operator in some of those states that have some restrictions, I also think that the body glass is really the focus in which, and when I talk about the body glass being more aggressive, that doesn't mean buying cheaper wine and selling them for a fortune, because we have seen the Pinot Grigio that costs $4.50 for $11, and I do not think that's appropriate at all. I think it's more about, okay, so let's take a look at my PMix, let's take a look at my reports, let's take a look what are my drivers, which one are my drivers in the store. So my drivers are, Southern California, it's pretty straightforward. Your drivers are Pinot Noir, Cabernet, Sauvignon Blanc, domestic Chardonnay.
Right.
Done. Everything else, it's for fun, okay? But those are the drivers. So identify the drivers. When you have those 4 SKUs, 5 SKUs, whatever it's appropriate for where you are, try to take a look at your depletion. Hey, I'm going through a pallet, every 2 weeks. So, I want to do a 6-month contract. Okay, we're talking about 2 pallets a month. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's 12 pallets of wine.
Yeah.
Many wineries out there are interested, especially people don't realize that there are many wineries all over the planet. They bulk a good amount of their juice because they don't sell everything they bottle.
Right.
So, private labels, having like a private label. Cucina has 3 formal private label, and right now we have a 4th one with Chris Miller that made our domestic Pinot Noir. So reach out to some of the people that even to supplier, and be like, hey, I have this, and in order to be able to offer more aggressive pricing, so lower pricing on my wine list, I really want to anchor down my body glass, okay, and make a longer commitment, and then finish your depletion. I hate when there is a deal and then you're like, I committed to 360 cases, but right now we went through 300 and I want to change my body glass. Finish your depletion. I don't care. You finish it, go through everything, maintain the relationship, but focus on your drivers.
It's a handshake and it's honorable, right? And you say, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it.
You got to be right by the supplier. One of the rules that most of my coworkers know that I'm really adamant is also on the little Bible that I have over here. It's the hospitality needs to continue also with your representative, like sales representative. I mean, Cucina, if you have an appointment with myself or any of my beverage manager, I'm there 15 minutes prior. Table is set up. Front door knows where you are supposed to go. Front door knows who you are. And then I think, that the hospitality you bring there is going to allow everything else to fall into place. So focus on your driver and, get your costs down. Trust me, there is so much wine out there.
Now, you said that your ownership, and you talked about this obviously from the Windows on the World ownership, and then your ownership at Urban Kitchen Group with Tracy, had this idea that we would lower margins and cost of goods in order to sell our more volume. Are there any other models that you've come across that, you haven't gotten to implement yet, but, may in the future, whether it's in, a future position with a different ownership or even maybe at a different concept that really is value driven for the customer, but also makes money for the restaurant?
Well, I think at the end of the day, and that's, again, my personal opinion, so who knows what's going to happen in the future, but I mean, we're going to come out from one of the biggest, probably, crises we ever seen, on the face of planet Earth. So not just the U.S. So I do believe in the future we need to focus on more on value driven and really allow everybody to be able to afford wine. So I do believe the price structure, it is going to change. I do believe that we have seen already a big jump from direct to consumer. It's something that has become more and more and more present. I mean, think about your tastings, think about all the stuff that you do with your YouTube, your Facebook channels and stuff and everything else. So I do believe we're going to see more direct to consumer, and I do believe that loyalty is going to play a big part of what's going to be the next generation of restaurants. And for the pricing structure, I hope, and that's what I'm going to be. I mean, I'll tell you this, it is impossible, Will, for me to even think about being able to work in a different place with a different pricing structure. Because once you make the jump and you really allow people in what you do, I still believe that this is the module and this is the model of the future. That's my opinion. I do believe we're going to see more restaurants lowering their prices. They might not
Yes.
going to do it right away, but I think it's going to happen. And I actually think that Cucina at one point, and that has been one of my recommendations, we should go for retail and then, being a multi-outlet. I think we're going to launch a wine club that it's ready to go. We just need to
Yeah.
press go and start. We're supposed to go live before the pandemic, and then of course we had challenges. But I think loyalty, a solid customer base, and definitely making sure that the pricing structure reflect the economy.
Business values. Yeah.
So I think that's what we're going to see, and more direct to consumer. I think you have realized. I mean, we're just talking about your trips being canceled and stuff like with the COVID and everything else. I mean, honestly, some of the tasting that you do with, of course, like we can't completely erase the
Right.
one-on-one and the relationship and stuff, but I mean, you can literally ship your samples and
Yeah.
hit a large group of people. Could be private buyers, could be even the average consumer directly from your home.
Right.
And I think that allows you actually to be much more productive in
Right.
a smaller amount of time. I mean, when you
You
try
have to
to
get
hit,
on a plane.
also you don't have to. I mean, I know that you San Diego very, very well, so you don't need to get stuck in traffic for 3
Traffic.
hours.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, I think also that's another spin that is going to change. Pretty.
That's Dottie. He makes an appearance every show.
I love it. I love it. So I think that's going to be something else that the industry, because think about Biennacido. I could be able to talk with the winemaker of Biennacido and have my whole team over here with maybe a flight of 3 wines, and your winemaker, can be talking to us for 15 minutes and
Right.
give us a rundown of 3 wines. And otherwise, it's hard for some of those people to leave the wine. I mean, we know how the
Right.
industry is, so.
And how far away the Central Coast is. It seems like it's just up there, but it's not that close.
No, it's not.
One of the things that I would like to see in the future, and this is clearly not legal right now, but it is in the UK. One of my mentors, David Nichols, he's the group director of food and beverage for the Mandarin Oriental Group. In the UK, at all of their restaurants, they have a consignment program. They work with their importers, and the importers own the inventory and sell the wine on their list for wholesale price. The restaurant has a markup based upon value of that wine. So let's say it was something that was wholesale $10. They would have a markup of $5 on top. The restaurant keeps the 5, the wholesaler gets the 10, and the guest gets a huge value, right? Because it's cheaper than retail. Now, as the pricing goes up, wholesale, you get something like, the Coche de Riz, where it might be $800 or $900. You may pay $100 as a restaurant fee, but you still got it for $900, which is cheaper than you can get it almost anywhere else. The inventory is owned by the wholesaler. So the supplier wins because the supplier sold them the wine. The wholesaler wins because they are able to still sell it at their wholesale price. The restaurant wins because they still made a free margin, except for glass, and labor or whatever else might be in.
Sure.
When you see volume, that creates effectively smart business for every piece of the 3-tier structure. It's not legal in the United States to have this consignment business, but if there was, a way to change the industry where not as much cash flow is available for restaurant owners or even wholesalers or even suppliers, that is one very valuable play that could make sense and revolutionize the industry.
Well, and I think, the 3-tier system, being Italian for me, I'm going through WSET, I'm working through my diploma, so I'm kind of studying all these kind of things. It's kind of an interesting, it's coming after the prohibition, but it's kind of interesting to understand the 3-tier system. I think I actually, I invite everybody to do some research on the 3-tier system because it's interesting and you understand some loopholes and other stuff that are kind of a little gray. But I think what you just said, it's an incredible opportunity because at the end of the day, there are 2 things. One, first of all, my hope is more young sommelier, and it's not a critique because I'm one of them. So it's we're all kind of we're not, we're less than 40 years old, so we're all kind of in the mix. But young sommelier, first of all, there has to be a little bit more of, we need to be a little bit more humbled in some of the things that we do. And actually, again, take a look a little bit more from what people have done before. However, we also need to understand that we need to have our own opinion. We need to form our own opinion. And if we share our own opinion with honesty and with respect, you're never going to be disrespected, and you're always going to be heard. You know, the problem is like sometimes we come across with the arrogance. We're a little bit more too sure of ourselves because sometimes the passion takes over. Like, you know, you're really passionate, you're young, you have a lot of, you know, but you need to be really, you need to form your own opinion, your own palette, okay? And understand that there is no value. That's my opinion. There is no value. We are the one responsible of shaping the palette of many different generations.
Yeah.
So it is important for us to make our own choices and understand that it is okay not to have the same 50 wines on the menu. It is okay not to focus on the same 15, 20 Napa Cabernet that might have the similar flavor profile. And I'm going to tell you why. First of all, it's really hard for your staff on the floor to sell 17 different Cabernet coming from 3 appellation apart that have really similar winemaking style and flavor profile. Okay, it might be easier to have a Nero d'Avola in there. It might be easier to have some other stuff that allow you to talk about something different. Okay, and also be yourself. If you do believe that Friuli is the next cool spot for whatever you have in your mind, Cabernet Franc, great. Like, stand behind it. Go for it. Like, you know, be the guy that is like, hey, you know, I've done it multiple times. I've shipped bottle to Bobby Stuckey. I've done things that sometimes I'm like, and then a day after I'm like, whoa, maybe I should not have done that. But sometimes it's because I want your opinion. I mean, I stand behind this thing, but I do believe that I can get so far with my tools and my knowledge and experience. I know that you are one of the experts in that specific region in which you make wine and you have your own brand. What do you think? And, you know, sometimes you're like, sometimes the person you're talking to can be great job. It's fantastic. Sometimes it's like, I don't like it. It's not my thing, but you're doing your own thing and you're bringing value. If you keep doing what everybody else talk about, could be natural wine and nothing against it, but I'm saying like all the new topics that we hear every time, like, you know, natural wine and all this kind of stuff, but it's not coming from you. You're not adding value to the table.
Right.
You know,
you're just following along.
Add value. That's what wine is all about. Add value. You know how many times I had people sending back a Nerello Mascalese because you know, the wine is too lean, and one of my server was pushing, you know, the new Italian cool thing. And, you know, I'm like, okay, whoa, guys. The guest asked for Pinot Noir from California, and we kind of like pushed them to go to Nerello Mascalese, Sicily land, Etna. I was like, if I was the guest, I wouldn't be pleased either.
Well, there's no new oak on that wine, and it has a totally different like texture, and it's not as plush.
You know, there is not the same mouthfeel. You know,
color and the alcohol are the only things that are the same.
So, you know, but that's why I think it's so much fun to talk also with people that are more experienced than you and can give you a different kind of. I mean, I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of people, a lot of also local friends, like Josh Shore that you have next week is one of my somebody that I respect tremendously. I mean, it's just somebody that I respect not because he's a master sommelier, but just because he's like one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met.
Yeah.
You know, and when you listen to these people, they're also really humble. There are many that are really humble, you know, out there. You really understand. You understand, you know, how to do things better, how to be better, you know, and how to be more impactful at the end of the day. So,
Augusto, I appreciate your time, and obviously, I think anyone who watches this video can recognize just how much value there is in not only your philosophical on how to look at the wine industry, but also just making money, right? I mean, because at the end of the day, if we're not selling bottles, we're not going to be employed, and I think that's the biggest thing that you can give to your employer is the ability to make them money and make them important as a you know, icon in the industry. So I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Will, and thanks. That's a perfect closure.